Seriously, money is in the weirdest places that you don't expect. It will come to you when you're not even asking for it. But getting under the skin of those investors and finding out what's important to them will help you create a much better, mutually beneficial relationship when it comes to the investing. But again, it's just making sure that you keep that line of communication open. You're still alive, you're still paying the money, they're happy, you're happy, and everyone's getting exactly what they want out of this relationship. Welcome to This Property Life, brought to you by Property Wealth System, the UK's leading property education business. I'm Caroline Claydon and I'm flying solo today. And today's topic is how to find and work with investors to grow your property business. It's a topic so many people have questions around, and I thought it would be worth giving you 5 key elements to finding these investors, working with these investors, and following through on the promises that you set out with them. So the first thing that people really worry about is, I don't know anyone with money who would possibly give me money when I'm starting out, if I've got no track record and I don't know what I'm doing. These are really valid worries and concerns to have when you're starting out. And when I first started working with my property mentor, they suggested that I'd go to friends and family to ask them to be investors in my business at the beginning. Now, that door was not an option for me at the time due to my personal circumstances. I'd had my own recruitment business that had failed in 2008. And so here I was in financial difficulty, then going cap in hand to say, don't worry about that recruitment business. Here I am, I'm going to do property now. It just didn't sit right with me. I didn't have high self-esteem. I didn't have confidence. And the idea of going cap in hand to friends and family was just absolutely paralyzing to me. So I decided to master a technique where I would get strangers to offer me money instead. So the point 1 of my top 5 ways of finding and working with investors for your property business is to talk to people, tell them what you do. You need to start growing a network of people around you who might be interested. And I say they might be interested. They might never be interested. They might never become investors. That's also okay. So what I mean by this, really simply, I mean, building a network, that sounds really hard work. But what I mean is start talking to strangers about what you do. So a good example of this is I walked my dog in the park every day, and you start to talk to other doggy walkers, doggy owners. You start talking about your dogs a lot. You know what the dogs' names are. You never know what the humans' names are. And eventually you run out of things to talk about your dogs, and someone will say, what do you do? And this is your opportunity. If you like, in the business world, you'd call this your elevator pitch. 2 to 3 sentences where you tell somebody who you are, what you do, and what you're looking for. But you don't need to be as slick and as polished as that. And I've got a number of stories of other people's elevator pitches that have worked over the time. So, for example, you say, I'm a property investor and I beat the banks. That's a great one because it gets people curious. Everyone loves talking about property, so they'll ask you questions about how many properties have you got? What do you mean that you beat the banks? And that just opens the door to you talking about how you invest other people's money while investing in property as an asset class. So that's a nice little gentle elevator pitch. I'm a property investor and I beat the banks. I've never been confident enough to use that. I have to, full disclaimer, I haven't used that elevator pitch. I generally just say I'm a property investor and just leave it as that. Now, with social media being such a prevalent player in most people's daily lives now, you have platforms open to you that you could be telling people what you do without them ever asking, simply by the posts that you share on social media. Obviously, LinkedIn, you have more business-minded, career-focused folks on there. The tone of your content might be slightly different to what you put on, say, TikTok or Instagram, but you could be sharing photographs of your most latest property viewing without saying anything about needing investors, but you're just telling the story, putting yourself out there as a property investor, and they can see you active. That's really important. Now, the idea of asking someone to invest will put shivers down your spine, no doubt, if you're brought up in Britain, where talking about money is crass and bad mannered. So, frankly, just don't ask for the money. This is what I mastered. I didn't want to ever be feeling like I was cap in hand saying, please, will you give me X amount of thousands of pounds so that I can buy this property over here and I'll give it back to you. Promise I will. Promise I will. When you start building a little bit more confidence, of course, you can maybe start putting proposals to people. But at the very beginning, merely just telling people you're a property investor, even if you haven't bought your first deal yet, is a great way for you to get comfortable saying those words. Fake it till you make it, as Richard Branson says. But ultimately, just telling people what you do, they will show an interest. They'll ask you how you do it. You then tell them that you use other people's money, invest their money. You give them a better return than what they get in the banks. You know, interest rates have just come down 4.25 now. So it's very good. It's come by down by 0.25%, but, 4.75 is better than 5. And so people with savings in the bank are now going to be feeling, oh, hang on a minute. How am I going to get my money working harder for me? So you can solve their money problem by giving them a better return. So my first point in this podcast episode is all about talking to people, sharing with a wider audience what you do. That will naturally lead to people asking questions. You can put comments on your social media platforms saying, tell me what your greatest challenge in business is right now, or anything like that just gets conversation going. You never know who's watching, who's listening, who's spying, and who's just quietly in the wings checking you out. And those could become potential investors for you in the future. So knowing people with money is not essential. Having money to begin with is not essential. The key is knowing what you're talking about and talking about it with confidence. So while I didn't have any confidence at all in raising money, I had confidence in the information I was being taught, and then the implementation that I was given by my mentor. So that's the first point, is get the message out there, start building that message to as wide an audience as you possibly can. And you don't necessarily need to ask anyone for cash until you're ready to do that. The next thing is about having, well, I guess the title of this is the investor pitch, but I don't want you to think like we're back to that elevator pitch where you're being all salesy and pushy. Not at all. What I'd like to use is what I call a private investor's proposal document. Now, a private investor proposal document needs to tell the potential investor what's in it for them, and also give them the confidence that you know what you're doing. So if your private investor proposal document clearly states your experience, your deal that you're working on, the portfolio that's behind you, the people that are helping you, leverage off other people's experience and other people's help, the number of hours you've invested in gaining the knowledge, the money you've invested in gaining that knowledge, the research that you've done on your investment area, that's a fairly compelling picture that you're drawing. And then you tell them that you are going to get X amount % over a certain period of time, and this is how you're going to be paid it. You're basically taking away any potential questions they might have or any worries or concerns that they might have when it comes to investing here. Now, this investor pack, this private investor proposal document, could be in a written picture Word document, or it could be frankly just in your mind, and it's something that you talk through with people. So I've got different versions. I have the really dumbed down version where if someone's not very money savvy and they just know that they want to get a better return on their money, but they've no idea about stocks, shares, property, or investing in general, then I have a really simple flow charted diagram of how it works to be an investor with me. Then I've got a more heavy hitting private investor proposal document, which would be for, let's say, people who are in maybe the profession like accountancy. And so they're pretty savvy on risk and reward and potential for things to go wrong. So you need to really be a lot more padded out with the information for those guys. So a heavier hitting version. And then you go to the real full on bells and whistles version for your venture capitalist types, or frankly, where I'm at right now, for the big banks who are looking at you and not just looking at the deal itself, but they want to look at your full profile and your experience, your management structure in your business, the plan and projections for the next 3 years and 5 years. That's fairly heavy hitting, but that's when you're getting into the realms of millions of pounds being on the table. So having that private investor proposal document is really a helpful tool for you. Now, putting it together might feel daunting, but if you just break it down and think, if I had 50 grand sat in my bank and I was thinking about investing it somewhere, what kind of information would I want to know? What kind of information would I need to have at my fingertips for me to feel comfortable and assured that I wasn't taking any risk with my cash? That's a great place to start. So the return on investment, the time scale it's going to take, the way in which they're going to be paid. Are you going to pay them interest only every month? Or are you going to pay them quarterly, their interest? Or are you going to roll it all up and give a big balloon payment at the end of the term? You decide that in line with what works for the deal. The other thing to consider is, well, they might want to see your experience. And if you're just starting out, you won't have any experience. And that is a challenge. But I'm a big believer that to every problem, there's a solution. And the solution to that challenge and that problem is that you're going to leverage off someone else's experience. You can confidently say, I have invested X amount of thousands of pounds learning how to do this from Property Wealth System. Here is the CV of my mentor. Here's the CV of my trainer in this particular niche strategy. And they are holding my hand through the process. And this is how I know what I'm doing. And if you need to, maybe you can call upon them to maybe meet with your potential investor so that then you leverage off their experience and they answer all the questions that your investor might have, potentially, right? You want to have legal documents that are all drawn up. Now, that again sounds quite daunting, having legal documents. That doesn't mean you need to go to a very expensive solicitor to draw up loan documents. You can literally, on the back of a fag packet, I know, well, there's not enough room to write on fag packets now with all those horrible pictures, but it's write on a beer mat, a beer mat where you say, I owe you X amount of thousand, That is legally binding, which is pretty remarkable, to be honest. But of course, we're not going to use fag packets or beer mats. We are going to use even just a letter where you write the letter to the investor saying, further to our conversation, I am pleased you're becoming an investor with me with the following terms. And then you just state the terms and conditions out in that letter and both parties sign it, have it witnessed. That's a legally binding loan document right there. If you are loving what you're hearing on this Property Life podcast, you can join us for a free training that will give you a 7-step process, a roadmap on how to start and scale a property investment business. The 7th step of the process is the most surprising of all. It really shakes people when they learn that 7th and final step. You will also get some live case studies of deals our students are working on right now for training that's worth over £1,000. You can access that free by clicking the link in the show notes to access that 1 hour of content today. So this investor pack, although it sounds fairly heavy hitting, that you're putting together, like a pitch, it is just an information document that is going to give people comfort that you're going to say what you're going to do and that you're going to deliver on that because you have the ability to. Now, it's important also in this investor proposal document that you outline what's going to happen or what are you going to do if things don't go to plan. Because let's face it, we're realists. Life isn't perfect. Things rarely go to plan, and this is property, right? So we all know the pain of investing in property. And so we need to really address that and, take the bull by the horns with that. So Let's imagine that you say that you're going to invest that investor's money for a 9-month period. And then come month 8, you realize that the refinance process is taking way too long and there's no way you're going to hit that 9-month deadline. That's a problem. But the solution to that problem is, of course, communicating with your angel investor and advising them of the delay. Obviously, the interest will be paid accordingly. If you're paying them monthly, those will continue. But as long as you can outline from the beginning, look, there is a potential for this to run longer than anticipated. Refurbs can run longer, which then delays the refinance process or the sale. And so if you can outline that and say, well, but this is what I propose to do in the event of that scenario, then that really, really helps you. In fact, I personally had a scenario very early on when I started investing, and I had a really low value property that I had an angel investor give me the entire cash for because it was too cheap to get lending on. So if it falls under 40 grand, then you're not going to get a mortgage on that. So I had to buy it for cash and then refurb it, push the value up, and then refinance, get the mortgage at that point, and then pay the angel investor back, right? All good planning. However, now, I don't know if I've blocked it from my brain, but I can't actually remember why there was the delay in this one. But I remember saying to the angel investor, okay, the refinance isn't going to come through as quickly as we anticipated. So we've got a couple of options here. I can carry on paying you the interest and then pay you your capital back further down the line. Or we can come to another agreement where I pay some of your capital back as we go. And the investor chose for me to pay some of the capital back as I went. So I remember paying them their interest and like 2.5 grand a month for a set period of time, and then gave them the rest back. And I think that just gave them that comfort and confidence that the money just wasn't stuck and it wasn't, in a metal box that you couldn't get to. It meant that they were getting a little bit of their capital back. So it appeased any kind of worry or stress that they might have had. It's the only time actually that someone said, you know what, I would quite like my money back at the agreed terms. So can you please pull out the stocks to get that money back to me? Every other investor I've worked with since that moment has kept their money with me for a long term. There have been investors that come in and come out regularly, but I have a core number, probably around 9 or 10, that have their money with me for in excess of 2 to 3 years. And they say to me, actually, just roll that into the next deal, or, don't give me my money back. In fact, I have somebody where I'm paying for their kids' school fees. So the interest that I'm paying them on their money covers their kids' school fees. And so they're like, please don't give me that money back until my kids have left school. So you can really help people that have capital sat there that they don't really know how to get working well for them. And it can be a long-term relationship. So that private investor proposal document is a really neat little way of getting the idea in front of people, but also being able to answer their questions and satisfy any kind of concerns that they might have. So that's the second point. First is obviously building your network, getting the news out there of what you do, what you're looking for, the investor proposal document, the pitch, if you like, what you're doing, how it's going to work for them. That's the second point. And then the third point is really important, which I think a lot of property investors forget about, but that is, what is the goal of your angel investor? What do they need? So I touched on it already, right? There's one of my angels who I'm paying their kids' school fees, but I have another angel investor where I pay for their rent. So they are unmortgageable and they're not going to be mortgageable anytime soon. And they inherited some money. They invested that money with me and I pay them their interest every month. And that month is their rent and their council tax, right? So there's passive income for them, and they know that they're getting their capital back at some point in the future when they decide that they want it back. But they have honestly taken me aside and said, don't give me that money back, whatever you do. So this goal of the investor is important for you to get a handle on in the initial conversations. Obviously, people's circumstances change over time, but you might go heavy-handed into a potential conversation with an angel investor and be saying things like, I'll give you your interest every month, I'll give you security, I'll give you this, I'll give you that, when actually that's not what they're interested in. They're interested in something completely different. So it's important to establish what's their goal. Now, some of the deals that you're looking for investors for will only need the cash for, say, 6 to 12 months. Some of the deals that you're working on might need money for, say, 2 to 3 years. Then there might be other angel investors that would prefer a 5-year agreement. You have to ask questions before you enter into the conversations, before you even give that private investor proposal document. And by the way, I've got angel investors who've never even looked at my private investor proposal document. They're not interested in it. We've just had a conversation and that's enough for them, right? Everyone is different. We talked on one of the other podcast episodes about personality profiling and personality types when you're negotiating deals. This is where the personality profiling comes into play again. Are they very, very analytical? Are they needing spreadsheets and forms and pie charts? Well, then you're going to probably need the private investor proposal document for them. However, if they're more of a social butterfly and more amiable, then maybe a nice friendly conversation over a cup of tea is more comfortable for them. So investors have different ideas of what's important to them. Security might be one of them. And so you can offer security to investors, but I'll caveat that by saying depends on how much they're giving you and for what length of period. So for example, you can get £50,000 as an unsecured personal loan with some banks right now. So if an angel investor is offering you 20K and they want security over that, then you really need to start thinking sensibly about it. Does that stack on your deal? Where's that security coming from? And does that make sense for you? Some angel investors don't care about the security at all, and they just want that money every single month coming into their bank account. And so you need to look at your existing portfolio and income and to see if your business can support that monthly outgoing to that investor. If you were to do a flip, for example, you won't make any money from that deal until you actually sell the property. And if you don't have any surplus cash from other areas in your business, then paying an investor every single month is going to be too painful for you. So having this understanding of what the investor is truly looking for and what their end goal is will help you start structuring a financial proposal for them that works for both parties. If they're super cautious, they might want some capital and interest every month or every quarter. But if they're a bit more gung-ho, they'll say, I want a higher interest rate and I'll give you more money and I'll give it to you for longer. So generally speaking, you will give a higher interest rate if someone gives you more money for a longer period of time. So that is the third point, is understanding specifically this human being, this individual, what's important to them and their money. What's the picture around them? Are they married? Are they single? Have they got family? What's their interests? Maybe the investor is such a massive football fan that they just want Premiership football tickets for 3 away games. Who knows? But getting under the skin of those investors and finding out what's important to them will help you create a much better, mutually beneficial relationship when it comes to the investing. The next point, the fourth point, is about very, very clear terms and conditions in the agreement. Now that sounds pretty obvious. I've already talked about legal documents, but I've also talked about what we do if things don't go to plan. The key elements to these terms and conditions is if an angel investor comes to me and they say, I've got some money, I want to invest it with you, but I might need it back in the next 3 months or so because I'm about to buy a house for myself, I will not do business with that person. I will not take that money because as a property investor, You cannot be knee deep into a deal and then have an angel investor turn around and say, I'd like my money back now, please. So again, understanding the angel investor's goals, timescales, that then feeds into the terms and conditions. So all of these points I'm sharing with you today neatly linked together like a jigsaw puzzle. So terms and conditions, 3 different ways an angel can be paid. One is interest only, paying them every single month, or it could be interest only, paying them quarterly or 6 monthly or maybe annually. The next would be balloon payment. They get the interest and all their capital back at a certain point in the future in one big lump sum. And the third option is capital and interest, and that can be done monthly, quarterly, 6 monthly, or annually. You need to decide on the deal that you're working on what's best for your business, but also does it fit nicely in with what the investor is looking to do as well. So for my bigger deals, my angel investors are in for anywhere from 12 months, 24 months, 3 years, maybe in some cases 4 years. And I write in the agreement that if, it's impossible to say what's going to happen in 4 years' time and what personal circumstances might hit someone's life in 4 years' time, right? So I understand that. So we say that, okay, if you do need your money back quicker than the term agreed, you need to give me, now I normally say 3 months notice, but I know a number of people in my network, they say 6 months notice. Again, that will be determined on the amount that has been invested. So you can write whatever you want in this agreement to work for both your angel investor and yourself and your deal. But an angel investor wanting their money back, like yesterday, in a knee-jerk reaction, phone call saying, I need it back now, that is going to put incredible stress on your shoulders. And that just needs to be avoided by either not doing business with that person or having it very clearly stated in your terms and conditions of the loan agreement that the time frame is 12 months, 24 months, 3 years, whatever, or specify a date. Sometimes I specify a date or earlier, dependent on the refinance or the sale. Because again, you have multiple exits to your deals. And so they could get their money back in a number of different ways. So you can state that out in your loan document as well. As long as in that loan document, you have contingencies for if their personal circumstances change and they want the money back earlier, then they have to give you X amount of notice. And if your personal circumstances change, then you can give the money back earlier. But I generally state in the terms and conditions, it will be no earlier than 12 months. Because in their minds, if they're investing that money with you, and it's taken a lot of emotions for them to be comfortable with that, and they're in and out in 3-4 months, then that doesn't feel so good for them. They've got to feel like they're getting something from it. Like in any negotiation, both parties need to feel good about the outcome. So the loan document, the letter, the beer mat, the fag packet, whatever you're going to write this on, needs to clearly state for both parties some protection. Now, another element that I'm really strict on with my angel investors is that they have a will drawn up. And it sounds a bit crazy talking about getting them on board as an investor and then talking about them dying. But again, this is a really valid point to your deals and your business is if your angel investor passes away in the duration of your agreement, what the heck then happens, right? You can't have the estate saying, excuse me, can I have my 300 grand back next week? We're winding up this estate. That doesn't stack up, right? So you want to have the angel investor share that they have their will drawn up, the beneficiaries will honor this agreement, have that written down somewhere and have everyone sign and date that. And equally, in the terms and conditions, if you were to die as the property investor, or if I was to die, that again, that capital will be repaid through the winding up of the estate, and the interest will be paid as agreed until that money is repaid as agreed. So death needs to be covered in the terms and conditions, as well as refurbs running over, as well as unable to sell your property for market conditions or whatever else comes out of the woodwork. Some of these things are out with your control. Some of these things are just market conditions, again, which you can't control. So as long as both parties are fully aware that every I is dotted and T is crossed so that everybody is protected and looked after, that's really important. And then my final step in the whole process, my fifth and final step, is that frankly, you follow up with your angel investor, you keep communicating with them, and you do exactly what you promised to do. It's really that simple. Now, when I say follow up with your investor, some of my investors never want to hear from me. They're not interested. Not that they don't want to speak to me, but frankly, they're just quite happy getting their interest every quarter, every month, and they don't need to know how my deals are going. They're not really interested in my property business. They just know that their money's working harder with me than it is in the banks, right? So that's great. But you might have other investors who would love a little investor update. So I make it a point that every 6 months or so, maybe even annually, depending on the deal, I put a little investor update document together with my before and after pictures, a little narrative about what's going on, challenges that I've faced, timelines on money being repaid, and just a little narrative, a story about how it's all going. And I email that out. I hear back from some people, I don't hear back from others. But again, it's just making sure that you keep that line of communication open. You're still alive, you're still paying the money, they're happy, you're happy, and everyone's getting exactly what they want out of this relationship. If you do the first 4 steps that I've just shared with you, then the 5th step is generally fairly straightforward. And Stafford Street was a big project for us, and it was delayed over a year to get planning. So of course, everything that's on my loan documents with my angel investors, I'm going back to them saying, right, okay, this is what's happened. This is now the plan. You have these 3 options. Get your money back at this stage or that stage, roll your money into the next deal. And then they come back and they tell me which one they'd like. But all the while that these conversations are happening, they're still getting their interest. I personally really love paying my angel investors monthly or quarterly with their interest. I don't know if this is because I've had bad debt with the failed business way back in 2008 before, but the idea of money just gathering interest and just sitting there and gathering interest and just sitting there and gathering interest just fills me with horror and dread. I'd much rather put myself under financial pressure on a monthly basis to pay that interest than have that in one huge, big, horrible scenario at the end, because there are delays. And if you keep on top of it, I just feel better about that. Whereby I've got team members at Property Wealth System where they pay their angel investors their interest annually. So every December, they just get their little Brucey bonus interest payment, and that's their Christmas paid for. It really does depend on where your mindset is with this and what your angel investor wants. Join us for our 3-day property intensive workshop. This is world renowned. This is the program I took global for Rich Dad Education and Robert Kiyosaki. This 3-day intensive workshop will go through a step-by-step process on how you are going to choose the correct strategy for your life, your circumstances. We'll go through the pros and cons of each of these strategies, and then we'll show you how to actually pinpoint your investment area, how to find the deals in that investment area, as well as how to do the deal analysis. That deal analysis saves you from making any expensive mistakes in the property market. We'll show you how to raise the money. There are more than 40 different ways of raising money to structure your deals in a creative way. We'll show you how to make lump sums of cash, as well as residual monthly income. We'll also look deep into the whole psychology and how you can use debt to create generational wealth. We'll go into multi-million pound transactions, as well as the little baby buy-to-lets at the start. And we'll show you how to actually create that wealth plan for the future so that your generations to come can benefit from the work you put in today. When you secure your ticket to the next 3-day intensive property workshop, you will also qualify for our bonus material. We have a learning platform with over 20 videos and downloadable documents to get you started and prepared for attending the workshop. In those videos, whenever they're updated, you will get access to that content. We will also make sure on the workshop that you get a one-to-one consultation with a property investor so that you can have a bespoke strategy specific to your life so that you can hit the ground running after the workshop. We don't want you to attend a course after course after course. We want you to get results now. To secure your place in our world-renowned, 5-star rated, sellout property workshop, click the link in the show notes to secure your spot now. Spaces fill up quickly, so don't delay. You also don't need to have a specific deal that you're particularly looking to raise money for. We have angel investors approach us regularly saying, do you have any opportunities right now to invest, because I have this 50K savings that I'd like to get working harder for me. We're always talking to potential investors and can get their money working harder for them. But like I say, I want to pay that interest on a monthly basis. It gives them some cash flow regularly. And also, I think psychologically for them, they know that I'm good for it then, because they're seeing some action behind the money that they've invested. So I like that from both sides of the coin. But then also, they're far more likely to want to give you more. You'll find that if you give an angel investor their money back, as agreed, you've followed through, you've delivered, the chances are they're going to want to do that again. And if you really know how to raise money through other channels as well as angel investors, you could actually teach them how they can raise more money and then lend it to you. So for example, this is kind of sexy. If you know that you can get a personal loan of 50 grand from Barclays at like whatever, 6-7%, but you're paying 8% to your investors, you could say to them, well, hey, your credit file is good enough. You qualify for this 50 grand loan from Barclays. You're going to get it at 6.5%. I'm giving you 8%. You've got your other 50 grand that you've given me. You're getting 8% on that. You're making money from the bank's money. They feel really clever then, right? They feel really happy. They're feeling really good. And you've just guided them on how they can give you double the amount of money that they gave you in the first place. Making money from other people's money is a really, really sensible way on how to get money working like a muscle. The more you move it and use it, the bigger it gets, right? So angel investors, I love. They're, as a private agreement, you can come up with a solution for both parties to feel good. The banks don't know that you're using it, which is great because it's not sitting there on your credit file. So it works for that. I get a great sense of achievement from it and satisfaction knowing that my angel investors need me to keep their money, right? If you reframe the fact that you need an angel investor and actually the angel investor needs you, you suddenly start feeling and thinking differently about raising money. The last place you want to be is sat with an offer accepted on a deal and going, I need 25 grand. I need 25 grand. I got to find 25 grand. I've got to find it. I need an angel. And having that panic and stress of relying on other people. If you start putting in the work before the offer is accepted and just start talking to people. So the points that I've just shared, building that network, telling the story as early as you possibly can, understanding what your pitch is, like, getting a better return for people's money, getting your private investor proposal document together, understanding what the investor wants out of their own cash, then getting really clear terms and conditions and boundaries for the agreement set out, and then actually delivering on it. If you follow all of those, you start really building your confidence, and the money just does come to you. When I first started, I'll share with you that the thought of finding £15,000 was like Mount Everest to me, like impossible. I was over 6 figures in debt, failed business, self-esteem in the toilet, and finding 15 grand for refurb was just, Mount Everest. It was so difficult. And the only way to climb Mount Everest is obviously to take one tiny step after one tiny step after one tiny step, right? But I wasn't convinced that the tiny steps I was taking was in the right direction. But I did everything I was told to do. Started talking to people as if I knew what I was talking about. I started just spreading the word. This was before social media. I'm that old. And it works, right? I'll tell you, the very first angel investor I ever actually secured was somebody who was attending one of the advanced courses that I was on, right? So we're both there learning as students together. And I'm telling them as a peer my problem, right? I'm time rich, I'm cash poor, I've got this deal, I need 15 grand, I'm freaking out. I'm sure it'll be all okay in the end. They say, trust the process. If the deal's right, the money will come, but I'm flipping out. And he says, well, I'm super time poor. I'm working overseas a lot. I'm never on the ground. I want to build my property business, but I'm never here. I'm going to need some help for people finding deals, but I've got the cash. And there was this light bulb moment for both of us that we both could solve each other's problems. I've got the time that he doesn't have. He's got the cash that I don't have. And he was my first angel investor. He didn't need a private investor proposal document because he knew what I was being taught and I knew what he was being taught. And that one simple conversation with someone, which, by the way, I was not asking him for money. I was just sharing with him a situation that I was experiencing. And it just turned out that we could solve each other's problems. That was like a massive light bulb moment for me that seriously, money is in the weirdest places that you don't expect. And it will come to you when you're not even asking for it. And I loved that. And that was what changed everything in my mind about raising money. And so I've raised money from crazy places like walking my dog in the park, to my nail technician, to a ghostwriter. So I've been writing a property book for like 7-8 years, still not finished it. You know, it's on the to-do list. I need to get around to it. You need to make me accountable for that. And my ghostwriter, who was helping me write the book, was like, I've got 100 grand. I want to give it to you. And I'm like, what? Just because, of course, I was telling him all about what I want on my book. And here we go, right? So that was crazy. But there are so many people that have money just sat in the bank, and we've just had that interest rate announcement of it dropping to 4.75, that people will be worried. They'll be like, inflation's still high, Donald Trump's just got into office, like we have Stammer that's coming after everybody's cash, like shit, what am I going to do? What's my solution? And you are that knight on the horse riding to their rescue. So guys, don't be scared about this. It is intimidating. I understand how it feels at the beginning. That £15,000, at the beginning was so mentally difficult for me to overcome that now I think about £1 million as like a tenner or as 100 quid. It's like zeros. They don't really matter. The same principles apply for everything. The bigger the business and the bigger the deals, the more resourceful you have to be. The better you get at solving problems. That's what I found anyway. And like I say, I've gone through a whole evolutionary cycle of relationships with buy-to-let lenders, right the way through to commercial banks and private equity guys that are sitting there analyzing your proposal as the person behind the business, as opposed to the bricks and mortar that you're talking about. And you just adapt and evolve with how your business grows. I really hope that you've enjoyed the content on how to find and work with private investors to grow your property business. You can find me on Instagram, carolineclaydon.property. Property Wealth System has a community page on Facebook, and I'm doing a Q&A in there this weekend. By the time this episode goes out, it will probably have been and gone, but I may do others if you are keen to be on those Q&As. Please do let us know the kind of topics you want to hear us talking about. I'm doing masterclasses in London next week. I've got my 3-day property intensive training down in London the first weekend in December and then the last weekend in January. So there's lots of ways for you to learn. Our next episode, I suspect, is going to be about artificial intelligence and how that's going to change your business. It sounds weird, right? Artificial intelligence, how is that possibly going to change a property business? Well, it is. It really is. Because information is becoming so readily available. Everything can be so automated now that actually people's experience and implementation is really where everything lies now. And we need to be ahead of the curve. So I suspect that will be one of our episodes coming up in the future. But do let us know what you'd like to hear more of. Do you prefer me talking on my own, or do you prefer Nick coming on so I can bash him about the head a bit? Let us know, give us feedback. We want to deliver for you exactly what you want. It's been great sharing this content with you today, and I will see you again very soon. Remember to click the link in the show notes for you to access a free online 1-hour training special that's worth over £1,000 to start and scale your property business today. Click the link in the show notes to watch.